Imagine being humiliated by the people you trusted most, laughed at, mocked, and dismissed without a second thought. Now imagine discovering that you hold the key to their entire fortune. This is the true story of Madeline Carter, a powerful CEO who quietly hid her identity to find genuine love, only to face shocking betrayal and disrespect. But instead of breaking down, Madeline chose to rise above, turning pain into power, betrayal into empowerment, and humiliation into unstoppable strength. Get ready for an inspiring journey of courage, dignity, and unforgettable revenge, proving once and for all that true power isn't given, it's discovered within. If you enjoyed this powerful true value story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more inspiring and empowering videos. The day I decided to hide my identity was the day I began to truly understand who I was. I had built a life based on certainty, clear paths, solid strategies, and meticulous control. My name is Madeline Carter, and at 37, I was the CEO of Elysium Tech, one of the most successful software companies in Silicon Valley. Most people knew me as a decisive, strong-willed businesswoman who rarely appeared in public. My name carried power, respect, and perhaps intimidation. Yet, beneath all that success, I was just as vulnerable as anyone else, haunted by questions I didn't even know how to ask myself. On an unusually cool Friday afternoon in San Francisco, I sat quietly in my office, gazing out through the glass walls overlooking the sprawling cityscape below. The sunlight filtered through the windows, warm yet distant, unable to reach the chill I carried within. Today was not about business. Today was personal, and it left me oddly anxious. "You'll like Andrew, Maddie," Victoria, my closest friend and business advisor, had said earlier that week, eyes twinkling mischievously. "He's genuine, humble, nothing like the usual suspects circling your life." Her enthusiasm was infectious, but cautious optimism had become second nature to me. Andrew Preston. The name was familiar. He was the youngest son of Richard Preston, the influential chairman of Orion Group, one of our largest strategic partners. Though Orion accounted for almost 40% of their business through us, I'd never met Andrew. The reputation of his family was mixed. Wealth and status came hand in hand with whispers of arrogance. Yet Victoria insisted Andrew was different. I leaned back in my chair, running a fingertip along the polished oak desk, thoughts tumbling gently in my mind. My instinct whispered something I had always known deep down. I was tired of men drawn to power, status, and money. I wanted someone who saw past all of that, someone who valued authenticity. My previous relationships had always felt transactional, clouded by my status and the enormity of my success. A soft knock broke my reverie. Victoria stepped inside, carrying her characteristic warmth like a tangible presence. She studied me carefully. "Nervous?" she asked softly. "A bit," I admitted, my voice quieter than I intended. "Madeline Carter, nervous?" Victoria laughed softly, settling into the chair across from me. "Andrew isn't another business deal. It's just coffee. Relax." "Coffee with the son of Orion's chairman," I corrected gently, but smiled despite myself. She shrugged, her gaze firm. "Then don't be CEO Madeline. Be Maddie, just Maddie. Find out who he is, not who he wants you to see." Her words echoed clearly in my mind, simple yet powerful. I sighed, knowing she was right. Maybe it was time to remove the armor I wore so proudly. Maybe it was time I risked discovering a reality I'd always feared, being accepted without titles or achievements, just for being me. That evening, as I walked toward the small cafe in downtown San Francisco, my heart beat faster than it ever did in any boardroom negotiation. The aroma of roasted coffee beans wrapped around me, comforting yet stimulating. Andrew was already there, sitting at a corner table, immersed in a book, oblivious to the world. His dark brown hair was slightly tousled, and he wore simple jeans and a casual jacket, so refreshingly ordinary, so unlike the privileged heirs who'd bored me with their tales of conquest and entitlement. "Andrew?" I called softly. He looked up, startled, and a warm smile blossomed across his face. "You must be Maddie," he stood, extending a hand in genuine warmth. "It's good to meet you." I shook his hand firmly, searching his eyes briefly. They were honest eyes, a deep shade of hazel. There was curiosity there, but no calculation, no agenda. It was both comforting and unnerving. Over coffee, conversation flowed easily. Andrew had a gentle confidence, speaking about his passion for environmental sustainability and innovation. He was eloquent, yet humble, carefully sidestepping any references to his wealthy background. For the first time in years, I found myself genuinely engaged, not thinking strategically, not analyzing, just talking, laughing, and forgetting for a moment who I was supposed to be. "So, what do you do, Maddie?" Andrew finally asked, sipping his coffee. I hesitated briefly, a split-second decision crystallizing in my mind. "Oh, I work in tech," I replied vaguely. "Nothing glamorous, really." His smile widened. "Glamorous or not, I'd bet you're good at what you do." "Why's that?" I teased, genuinely curious. "Because you listen," he said simply, leaning slightly forward. "Most people pretend to, but you actually listen." His words stirred something deep within me, a quiet recognition, a fragile hope that perhaps my instinct about him had been right. Maybe Victoria's assessment wasn't too optimistic. Yet, beneath that hopeful glow, I still held on to the careful boundary I had created, protecting myself from potential disappointment. As we parted ways that evening, Andrew lightly touched my arm, gentle yet meaningful. "I'd love to see you again, Maddie." "I'd like that," I said truthfully, feeling unexpectedly shy. The simplicity of the moment touched me more deeply than I'd expected. Walking home, the city lights shimmering around me, I allowed myself a rare moment of unguarded optimism. But even as I felt that cautious joy, my inner voice whispered a warning. A question lingered in my heart. What would he think of me if he knew who I truly was? That night, lying alone in my quiet penthouse overlooking the bay, my mind refused to quiet. Andrew Preston was intriguing, kind, sincere, all I wanted yet feared most. My decision to conceal my true identity had opened a door to genuine connection, yet now it hung over me as both shield and sword. I stared at the ceiling, breathing softly, remembering the sincerity in his eyes, the softness of his voice. The night around me grew still, yet my heart remained restless, whispering truths I was not yet ready to fully embrace. Maybe I had already begun a journey that would change everything I believed about trust, truth, and myself. Or maybe I had simply set the stage for another inevitable heartbreak. Only time would tell, but deep down, I knew I'd already crossed a line from which there was no turning back. In the days following our first meeting, I found myself caught in an unfamiliar rhythm, the steady pace of anticipation and cautious delight. Andrew had begun to occupy my thoughts more than I cared to admit, slipping gently through the layers of professionalism and guarded composure I had so carefully maintained. Each encounter seemed effortless, yet a part of me remained vigilant, quietly observing, endlessly analyzing. It was on our third date, a quiet walk along Crissy Field with the iconic Golden Gate Bridge glowing softly against the twilight, that the first true flicker of doubt emerged within me. "Do you ever wonder," Andrew began, his voice calm but curious, "if people truly know us, or just the parts we choose to show?" His question startled me, as though he'd peered straight into the inner sanctum of my guarded thoughts. I glanced sideways at him, watching how the soft ocean breeze brushed his hair back gently. "All the time," I admitted quietly, adjusting my scarf as if to hide the sudden vulnerability in my voice. "It's easier to show only what we think others can handle." Andrew stopped walking, facing me directly, his gaze steady and kind. "And what about me, Maddie? Am I only seeing a piece of you?" My heart quickened. Instinctively, my defenses rose, cautious of his insightfulness. But when I met his eyes, sincere and patient, I softened slightly. "Maybe a little," I confessed, choosing honesty even within my careful concealment. "I suppose we all keep secrets, even if unintentionally." He smiled, thoughtful rather than hurt. "Fair enough. Perhaps one day we'll trust each other enough to share them." As we resumed walking, his words echoed gently, soothing yet unsettling. I yearned for genuine connection, yet fear whispered caution. Memories from past relationships surfaced, moments when men had claimed to want nothing more than authenticity, but had inevitably revealed other motives: power, status, access. They all said they valued honesty, until honesty threatened their sense of control. That night, sitting alone in the gentle solitude of my living room, I reflected deeply on my own contradictions. Outside, the city lights shimmered like countless stars, bright yet distant. Why had I, a woman known for clarity and decisiveness, willingly placed myself in such an uncertain position? Was it truly curiosity about Andrew's character, or was it rooted deeper in my own longing to be valued beyond what I represented professionally? I reached for a forgotten photograph tucked inside a book on the coffee table. It was old, slightly faded, a younger me, smiling brightly at my first startup celebration a decade ago. The woman in that photo was optimistic, open-hearted, unguarded by layers of skepticism. She had trusted openly, loved freely, and inevitably, she had been betrayed. Mark, my first serious partner, had seemed perfect at first. Kind, supportive, charming. Yet, the moment my career began to overshadow his, jealousy seeped into every crevice of our relationship, poisoning our trust. The bitterness of his final words still lingered years later. "You're cold, Maddie. People are just transactions to you." It wasn't true. It had never been true. But those words became my armor, forged in hurt and disappointment. From then on, I had approached relationships cautiously, testing sincerity, constantly evaluating intentions. Andrew had effortlessly navigated around this armor, stirring something deep within me. Hope, perhaps, or merely a desire for authenticity I'd long denied myself. My phone vibrated suddenly, breaking through my reverie. Andrew had sent a simple text. "Thinking of you. Hope you're having a peaceful night." A soft smile tugged at my lips, my heart responding before my mind could raise another objection. "Thank you. It's been quiet. What are you doing?" His reply came swiftly. "Looking up at the stars, wondering if you're doing the same." A wave of warmth flooded through me, chased by a shadow of doubt. My finger hovered over the screen, hesitating briefly. "Yes, maybe we're seeing the same ones." The simplicity of the exchange left me vulnerable. I placed the phone down, drawing a deep breath, trying to still the quiet whispers of fear inside my chest. What if Andrew's sincerity was merely another well-crafted mask? What if he, too, was captivated by the illusion rather than the reality? Yet even as I questioned him, another voice rose louder, a quieter, gentler part of myself that longed desperately to believe in authenticity once more. The days became weeks, our bond quietly deepening. Yet, beneath the warmth of each encounter, my uncertainty never fully faded. Every thoughtful gesture from Andrew, a handwritten note tucked into a book he knew I'd like, a quiet dinner prepared at home, was both comforting and unsettling. Each act of kindness pulled me closer, yet simultaneously heightened my guarded suspicion. One evening, as Andrew quietly cleaned up after dinner in his modest apartment, so unpretentious despite his privileged upbringing, I found myself carefully observing him from the couch. There was a gentle humility in every movement he made, an ease in his silence that spoke louder than grand gestures ever could. "Why are you staring at me like that?" Andrew teased, glancing over his shoulder with a playful smile. I hesitated, searching for honesty amid my carefully constructed boundaries. "I'm just trying to figure you out," I admitted softly. He dried his hands and approached me slowly, sitting beside me with careful curiosity. "Have you made any progress?" I smiled faintly, trying to mask the quiet storm inside me. "You seem genuine. It scares me." Andrew's smile faded slightly, replaced by thoughtful seriousness. "Why does sincerity scare you?" "Because sincerity means trust," I whispered, more to myself than to him. "And trust can become a dangerous thing." He took my hand, gently intertwining our fingers. His touch was reassuring, yet made me tremble inside. "Not everyone will betray your trust, Maddie. At some point, you have to believe that." I nodded silently, wanting desperately to believe him. But experience had taught me caution, and even as I leaned into his gentle embrace, my mind remained quietly vigilant, wondering if the sincerity I saw was just another beautiful illusion waiting to be shattered. Later that night, standing by my window once more, I gazed across the darkened city, allowing myself one brief moment of unguarded truth. Perhaps Andrew was different. Perhaps my doubts were unfair projections from a past I couldn't escape. Yet, even as I held tightly to that fragile hope, I knew deep within me that my hidden identity still stood as a barrier, a truth that eventually would either strengthen our bond or destroy it entirely. Only time could reveal which outcome awaited me. Until then, I would live cautiously within this delicate balance of hope and doubt, trusting my instincts, yet unable to silence the quiet warning that whispered gently, persistently in my heart. You are falling, and falling always carries the risk of hitting the ground. The evening I met Andrew's family began with an uneasy quietness, like the calm before an unpredictable storm. As the car approached the Preston family estate nestled elegantly within the hills of Marin County, I felt tension coiling tightly around my chest. The mansion stood illuminated beneath twilight's glow, grandiose, immaculate, and silently judgmental. This was not simply a home, it was a stage where appearances dictated worth. You seem nervous, Andrew said softly from the driver's seat, glancing toward me with a reassuring smile. Maybe a little, I admitted, smoothing the soft fabric of my dress, a simple midnight blue garment chosen specifically to appear understated. It's important to me, meeting your family. Andrew's smile widened, genuine and comforting. They'll love you. Just be yourself. If only it were that simple, I thought, forcing myself to smile. My hidden identity, the carefully curated mystery of my professional persona, still remained intact. But now, stepping into his world, I wondered anxiously if my protective deception might soon unravel itself. The front doors opened graciously, and we were immediately greeted by an older woman whose cold elegance preceded any introductions. Mother, Andrew began warmly, placing a gentle hand on my back. This is Maddie. Maddie, this is my mother, Charlotte Preston. Charlotte's eyes narrowed subtly, appraising me with a practiced glance. Charmed, I'm sure, she responded coolly, extending a hand as though reluctant to touch mine. Her skin was cool, her grip brief, indifferent. I felt my heart sink slightly, sensing immediately that I had already failed an unseen test. Dinner was served in a lavish dining room beneath a glittering chandelier that sparkled with an ostentatious glow. Richard Preston, Andrew's father, offered polite, though detached conversation about investments and golf tournaments, hardly acknowledging my presence. Charlotte's subtle hostility grew more evident with each passing course, her disapproval evident in dismissive glances and thinly veiled insults disguised as casual remarks. Tell me, Maddie, Charlotte finally spoke, her voice poised yet sharp like fine crystal. What exactly do you do for a living? I hesitated briefly, mindful of Andrew's attentive gaze and Charlotte's narrowed eyes. I'm in tech, I answered carefully, softly. It's not overly exciting, but it pays the bills. Charlotte raised one perfectly sculpted eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. Oh, how quaint. Andrew usually chooses more substantial company. A silent wave of discomfort rippled across the table, and my stomach twisted uneasily. Andrew, seated beside me, shifted slightly, but said nothing. A brief flicker of disappointment sparked within me. I had expected some defense, some small gesture of solidarity from him. But silence was his choice, and I felt acutely alone. My mother believes success is measured in lineage and titles, Andrew joked lightly, breaking the awkward silence but doing little to comfort me. Charlotte shot him a displeased glance, clearly not amused. And why shouldn't I? Charlotte replied coldly, sipping from her crystal wine glass. Ambition and breeding matter, Andrew. We cannot pretend otherwise simply because you feel adventurous. Mother, Andrew began, gently reproachful, yet still not fully confronting her sharpness. My cheeks warmed in quiet humiliation, but I masked my discomfort behind a careful smile, determined not to show weakness before Charlotte's disdainful eyes. Yet as dinner ended and we stood in the grand parlor saying our strained goodbyes, Charlotte's hostility erupted into open contempt. I do hope you enjoyed your evening, Maddie, she remarked icily, her gaze locked onto mine. Though I doubt someone of your background could fully appreciate it. Stung by her comment, I met her eyes calmly, determined not to flinch. "Thank you, Mrs. Preston. It was certainly enlightening." Her eyes flashed dangerously, anger breaking through her cultivated fad. With a sudden, shocking movement, she lifted her glass and tossed the remaining wine sharply into my face. "Mother!" Andrew gasped, eyes wide with shock, but the shock quickly shifted into something else, something utterly unexpected. A sudden laugh burst from him, startled yet genuine, as though witnessing an absurd spectacle. Standing there, wine dripping down my cheeks, my dignity soaked into the fabric of my dress, I stared in disbelief. Andrew, whom I had begun to trust, whose sincerity I had cautiously let myself believe in, had laughed at my humiliation. Charlotte's smile was triumphant, icy in its cruelty. "Did you really believe someone like you belonged here?" My heart thundered with quiet rage, but outwardly I remained silent, composed. The burning humiliation was intense, but clarity flooded my mind with profound intensity. In that instant, every careful boundary, every cautious hope I'd carried shattered into sharp reality. Andrew's laughter faded awkwardly as he noticed my silent composure, perhaps recognizing too late the betrayal he had committed. "Maddie, No," I said softly, firmly, cutting him off. "You've said enough." Without another word, I turned and walked toward the entrance, refusing to glance back at either of them. Every step echoed softly against marble floors, each sound reminding me of my own naivete. The humiliation burned fiercely, but beneath it rose a steely resolve born of quiet fury. I had entered their world cautiously, humbly, hoping for genuine connection. Now, I left with absolute clarity. Outside, the night air was crisp and silent. I wiped the remaining wine from my face, feeling the humiliation transform slowly into resolve. The gentle breeze cooled my heated cheeks, clearing my mind. Charlotte's insult and Andrew's betrayal hadn't broken me. They had freed me from illusion, from the false comfort of hope, and from the vulnerability I'd mistakenly allowed. As I climbed into the waiting car, I pulled my phone from my purse, quickly dialing a familiar number. Victoria's voice answered instantly. "Maddie, is everything okay?" My voice was calm, decisive, carrying a quiet intensity that even surprised me. "We're canceling all dealings with Orion Group, effective immediately." There was a stunned pause. "Maddie, are you sure? That will devastate them." "I know," I replied softly, resolutely, "but they made their choice. Now, I'm making mine." As the city lights blurred softly outside the window, I allowed myself to feel a brief pang of sorrow. For Andrew, for the fragile hope I'd lost, but mostly for the woman I had been just hours before. A woman willing to overlook intuition for the illusion of acceptance. But now, beneath the hurt and betrayal, clarity rose firm and unyielding, crystallizing into determination. Andrew and his family would soon understand who I truly was, not through whispers or illusions, but through action clear, decisive, and unflinching. They had judged me beneath them, unaware that my worth wasn't defined by their acceptance. I had hidden who I was not because I feared their judgment, but because I had hoped, naively, that love might see beyond power and titles. Now I understood the truth. As the car moved silently toward home, a single powerful thought solidified within me. They wanted a powerless woman. Now, they would face the woman they never saw coming. The silence that filled my penthouse apartment that night was louder than any noise I'd ever experienced. Closing the heavy door behind me, I stepped into the familiar comfort of home, yet felt completely alien within its walls. My reflection caught my eye as I passed the large entryway mirror. Mascara smudged faintly, darkened eyes betraying the exhaustion and humiliation I'd carried home from the Prestons' mansion. I exhaled softly, shutting my eyes as the scene replayed vividly in my mind. The icy splash of wine against my skin, Charlotte's cold sneer, and worst of all, Andrew's careless laughter echoing in my ears. Standing alone in my dimly lit living room, I allowed myself a rare moment of vulnerability, pressing my fingertips gently against my temple, trying to ease the pounding ache. My carefully maintained composure trembled beneath waves of hurt and anger, each emotion vying for control. Yet through the turmoil, clarity slowly emerged, sharp, quiet, undeniable. I sank onto the plush sofa, feeling the cold chill of leather beneath my fingers, and drew a shaky breath, forcing myself to revisit the moment, to truly feel it rather than dismiss or bury it. My heart pounded, pulse racing beneath my skin, as my mind methodically unraveled the events of the evening. Andrew's betrayal hurt the deepest, not because he had laughed, but because in that laughter lay the confirmation of my worst fears. His easy charm, the sincerity I'd cautiously believed, dissolved instantly into empty echoes. I'd mistaken charisma for character, allowed superficial warmth to overshadow instincts I had carefully honed through years in the boardroom. A quiet memory emerged, clear as daylight. My father's stern voice as he sat across from me years ago, in the tiny living room of my childhood home, eyes weary from years of hard labor and struggle. Maddie, never mistake kindness for sincerity. Sincerity doesn't flatter, it acts. Tonight, those words felt painfully prophetic. Andrew had been kind, flattering, charming, but never truly sincere. It was a bitter realization, a lesson learned through humiliation rather than wisdom. Slowly, I stood up and crossed the room, staring out at the glittering city skyline below. San Francisco sprawled beneath me, lights shimmering in defiance of darkness, beautiful yet indifferent to my pain. My gaze narrowed as I let the cold, analytical side of myself surface, transforming hurt into something productive, something tangible. Andrew and his family had underestimated me because they saw only what they wished, a powerless, disposable woman, easy to humiliate and discard. But they didn't know Madeline Carter. They only knew Maddie, the gentle, seemingly insignificant woman I'd carefully allowed myself to become in their presence. I picked up my phone from the coffee table, dialing Victoria again. She answered almost immediately, alert despite the late hour. "Talk to me, Maddie." My voice emerged steady, detached, a tone I usually reserved for boardroom negotiations. "I want every contract with Orion reviewed immediately. Pull the financials, identify our exact leverage points. Have legal prepare the termination documents. I want them airtight." Victoria paused briefly, absorbing the gravity of my words. "I'm already on it." "But Maddie, are you sure?" I took a steadying breath, allowing my earlier hurt to crystallize into resolve. Never more sure of anything in my life. I ended the call gently, closing my eyes as the rush of adrenaline slowly faded. Decisions made under emotional duress were dangerous, yet tonight's clarity was unmistakable. Orion Group depended heavily upon our partnership. Losing Elysium's backing would leave them exposed, vulnerable, and that vulnerability was exactly where I wanted them. Sinking back onto the sofa, I allowed myself a brief, lingering thought of Andrew. I recalled his gentle eyes, the comforting warmth of his touch. Those memories now felt hollow, tainted by his laughter, his silence, his passive betrayal. How quickly love could curdle into quiet disdain. Yet even as I felt bitterness, a deeper truth emerged clearly within me. My response wasn't about revenge, it was about respect. Respect for myself, for my boundaries, for every woman who had ever been dismissed or diminished by someone believing themselves superior. It was the quiet strength my mother had taught me, the dignity my father had instilled, the values that had built the foundation beneath my feet. Values Orion's wealth and prestige could never diminish. In the stillness of that night, amidst quiet contemplation and methodical preparation, I recognized the lesson clearly. Andrew's betrayal wasn't merely personal, it was symbolic. It represented every person who judged worth by titles, who diminished others to elevate themselves. My response needed to be measured, strategic, unmistakable. Not to punish, but to restore balance, to reassert my value and integrity. The city outside continued its distant hum, unaware of the profound shift occurring within my quiet solitude. This was my moment of awakening, painful, necessary, liberating. Tomorrow, Orion Group and Andrew's family would awaken to an entirely new reality, one they had crafted unknowingly through their arrogance and disregard. Standing once more, I walked slowly toward the window, placing a steady hand against the cool glass, watching my reflection carefully. Gone was the gentle, uncertain woman I'd allowed myself to become. In her place stood someone calm, determined, clear-eyed. "They've shown you who they are, Maddie," I whispered to myself. "Now, it's your turn to show them exactly who you are." Early the next morning, I stood in the expansive boardroom at Elysium, sunlight streaming softly through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a room usually filled with strategic calm. Today, an unmistakable energy crackled through the air. My decision, calculated and deliberate, would change everything. Orion's betrayal had forced my hand, and there was no room left for hesitation. Victoria stood beside me, holding a sleek tablet, her expression focused and attentive. Her eyes briefly scanned my face, seeking any hint of doubt, finding none. "The numbers are clear, Maddie," Victoria stated firmly, tapping the screen and revealing meticulous financial data. "Our contracts represent approximately 40% of Orion's annual revenue. Terminating these agreements abruptly will put them in immediate crisis. Orion's stocks will plummet, likely forcing leadership to restructure entirely." I nodded slowly, processing her words, my gaze steady and determined. "They chose arrogance over respect, Victoria. This isn't retaliation, it's self-respect. We don't do business with people who demean us." "I agree completely," Victoria replied softly, pausing a moment. "But the market will ask questions. Investors, media, everyone. They'll want answers." "Then we'll give them transparency," I answered calmly. "We'll say Orion no longer aligns with our company values. Let the public read between the lines." Victoria's eyebrows rose slightly, impressed by the simplicity of the strategy. "You're certain you're ready to take this public?" "Absolutely." My voice was firm, confidence radiating clearly through my posture. "The Prestons humiliated me personally, but professionally, they disrespected Elysium. Actions have consequences, and it's time they understood that." Victoria nodded, a subtle smile appearing at the corners of her mouth. "I'll have legal finalize everything immediately." As she exited the room, I turned back toward the vast windows, looking out across San Francisco's skyline. The city lay tranquil beneath the morning sun, oblivious to the dramatic shift soon to ripple through its business community. I felt no pleasure in the downfall I knew awaited Orion, but a quiet, resolute satisfaction in protecting the integrity of everything I had worked so tirelessly to build. Within hours, our legal department delivered airtight termination documents, concise yet undeniable in their authority. As my signature settled decisively onto each page, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't anticipated. I had spent my life careful and cautious, meticulously building my company on foundations of integrity and respect. Orion's careless arrogance had made clear where our values diverged. Moments after those contracts were dispatched, my phone vibrated urgently. Andrew's name flashed across the screen, his persistence evident through multiple missed calls. A tinge of emotion flickered through my chest, yet I quickly silenced it, steadying my resolve before answering. "Maddie!" Andrew's voice was strained, anxious. "What are you doing? The agreements! You know this will ruin us!" His sudden urgency felt bitterly ironic, highlighting clearly what truly mattered to him. "What am I doing, Andrew?" I echoed softly, carefully controlling my voice. "I'm simply responding to the reality your family presented me. Respect goes both ways. Unfortunately, your family forgot that." "Listen, my mother," he began hurriedly. "No," I interrupted gently but firmly. "Don't blame her. You made your own choices, Andrew. You laughed." A long, tense silence filled the line before he spoke again, quieter now. "I'm sorry, Maddie. I didn't realize how deeply that would hurt you." "That's precisely the issue," I answered steadily. "You didn't realize because you never truly saw me. You only saw who you believed I was, someone insignificant, powerless. You never told me who you really were," he said quietly, defensively. "And why should I have had to?" I asked, my voice unwavering. "Would knowing I was a CEO have earned your respect? Would it have stopped your laughter?" He didn't reply immediately, and in that silence, I had my answer. Gently, with finality, I ended the call. Placing my phone down, I felt an unexpected wave of liberation wash through me. My identity was mine alone to disclose. Respect should never be conditional upon titles or power. Later that afternoon, I quietly observed news channels as reports of Orion Group's sudden instability dominated headlines. Analysts speculated wildly about causes, but the truth was clear. Orion had lost its primary partner and largest revenue source overnight. The ripples of my quiet, strategic decision were spreading rapidly. Yet I felt neither triumph nor vindication, only a profound sense of relief, knowing I had stayed true to myself. My phone buzzed once more. A new message appeared, this time from Richard Preston himself, desperation evident. "Miss Carter, please reconsider. We're prepared to negotiate terms favorable to Elysium." I stared calmly at the message, my heart steady. Orion was feeling exactly what they had so carelessly inflicted upon me, a recognition of vulnerability, humility forced by circumstance. Yet, in my core, I understood this was no longer about Orion or Andrew, but about me and my boundaries. Respect was non-negotiable. Without hesitation, I replied simply, "I appreciate the sentiment, Mr. Preston, but my decision is final. Elysium wishes Orion the best in your future endeavors." Setting the phone aside once again, I exhaled deeply. My choice had been clear and unwavering, demonstrating to Orion and the world that strength wasn't measured by revenge, but by dignity and self-respect. My integrity was the only currency truly valuable to me, one I refused to compromise. Standing once more at the windows, watching the sun slowly dip toward the horizon, I realized clearly the subtle yet powerful transformation that had occurred within me. Andrew and Orion had betrayed my trust, but through that betrayal, they had inadvertently gifted me something precious: absolute clarity of self-worth. My decision had been carefully calculated, quietly powerful, unmistakably decisive. I wasn't merely responding to betrayal. I was reaffirming my values, my integrity, and the boundaries of my self-respect. In that moment, as daylight gently faded, I whispered softly to myself, "They expected weakness. But now, they'll face strength, the kind of strength they never imagined." News of Elysium's severed ties with Orion spread through the tech community faster than I'd anticipated. Within 24 hours, industry analysts speculated openly about the catastrophic fallout awaiting Orion Group. Their stock plummeted, investors panicked, and the media frenzy intensified. All eyes turned to me, the enigmatic CEO who had quietly executed a move that seemed inexplicable, yet utterly decisive. That evening, I sat calmly at my desk, watching as Victoria stood across from me, her tablet illuminated with headlines from major news outlets. Her expression was composed, tinged with quiet admiration. "Everyone wants to hear from you, Maddie," Victoria said, breaking our comfortable silence. "Wall Street Journal, Forbes, CNN, they all want exclusive statements." I nodded thoughtfully. "Schedule an interview tomorrow with whoever you trust most to deliver an accurate account. This isn't about vengeance, it's about clarity." "Consider it done," Victoria replied swiftly, her voice firm. She hesitated a moment, glancing up at me. "Are you ready for the entire world to know the real Madeline Carter?" I smiled softly, calmly meeting her gaze. "The world has always known me. Orion was simply blinded by their arrogance." Victoria left my office, and I leaned back in my chair, reflecting quietly. Tomorrow would mark the end of my anonymity, the quiet shield I'd maintained. But anonymity was no longer necessary. Transparency was now my strength. By morning, I stepped confidently into the bright studio lights of the CNN headquarters. The interviewer's gaze was curious, probing, yet respectful. I greeted her calmly, poised, the tension of the moment balanced by an unwavering inner peace. "Ms. Carter," she began gently, "Elysium's sudden decision has shaken the tech world. Can you explain why you terminated your long-standing partnership with Orion Group so abruptly?" I met her eyes clearly, steady, unhesitant. "Elysium operates on core values: respect, integrity, and dignity. Orion demonstrated they no longer shared these values." The interviewer's brow raised slightly. "This decision appears deeply personal." "It is both personal and professional," I responded calmly, choosing my words with care. Business isn't separate from values. Orion's leadership disrespected me personally, believing I was someone insignificant. They failed to recognize my true identity, both as CEO and as a human being deserving respect. A gentle murmur passed through the studio crew, curiosity evident in their eyes. The interviewer leaned forward subtly, intrigued. "Can you elaborate, Ms. Carter? What exactly happened?" With careful composure, I recounted the evening clearly and simply, Charlotte Preston's disdainful treatment, Andrew's laughter, and the undeniable moment when their judgment had forced my decision. Each word carried a quiet dignity, free of bitterness, yet charged with sincerity. The interviewer listened attentively, then asked softly, "Andrew Preston has publicly apologized, calling this a misunderstanding. Do you accept his apology?" I paused briefly, meeting her gaze with gentle authority. Andrew's apology came after consequences, not out of genuine remorse. True character is revealed in unguarded moments, not forced apologies. Orion's current situation is merely a reflection of their leadership's choices. The segment concluded gracefully. Leaving the studio, I felt the quiet liberation of authenticity wash over me. My story had been shared transparently, calmly, without anger or vengeance. The world knew who Madeline Carter was, not through gossip, but from my own lips. Back at Elysium, Victoria greeted me warmly. "The response has been overwhelming, Maddie. Public sentiment is firmly on your side. Orion's board has called an emergency meeting." I nodded slowly. "They'll handle this internally. Richard Preston understands business enough to know Orion must distance itself from this scandal quickly." As predicted, later that evening, news broke. Richard Preston had resigned as chairman of Orion Group, publicly taking responsibility for their corporate crisis. Andrew's departure swiftly followed, his name now synonymous with the arrogance and negligence that had cost Orion dearly. My phone vibrated quietly, Andrew again. This time I answered not from lingering emotion, but simple curiosity. "Maddie." His voice trembled slightly, devoid of his former charm. "Everything's falling apart. I'm sorry for all of it. I had no idea." "No idea?" My voice remained gentle, calm, yet piercing. "That's exactly the problem, Andrew. You never knew who I truly was, and you never cared enough to find out." "I know I failed you," he said quietly, desperately. "But please, Maddie, there must be something I can do." I exhaled softly, understanding clearly the difference between regret and genuine remorse. "You've done enough, Andrew. Now it's time for you to understand the weight of your actions. Maybe you'll finally learn to see people beyond status or wealth." The line went quiet, filled with the solemn recognition of a truth he'd evaded too long. Ending the call, I felt neither satisfaction nor vindication, only quiet confirmation that my actions had served their purpose. Clarity, justice, integrity. That night, alone in my apartment, I gazed once more across the city skyline, the twinkling lights peaceful yet indifferent to the events unfolding below. Orion's downfall had not been my desire, merely a consequence of their choices. My dignity was intact, my boundaries clear. A gentle knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. Victoria entered, offering a comforting smile. "I wanted you to see this," she said softly, handing me her tablet. The screen showed hundreds of messages from women across industries, inspired by my stand, thankful for the strength I demonstrated, grateful for the reminder of their worth beyond titles or acceptance. I felt unexpected emotions swell gently within me: gratitude, humility, purpose. Orion's betrayal had inadvertently created a powerful moment of unity, turning personal pain into collective empowerment. Victoria placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "This is your legacy, Maddie. They needed someone strong enough to say no more." I nodded, eyes moist but clear. "This was never just about me. It's about every person who's ever felt small or insignificant. Every woman who's been underestimated." She squeezed my shoulder gently. "And now, no one will underestimate Madeline Carter again." As Victoria left quietly, I returned to the expansive windows, heart full yet peaceful. Orion had seen only the woman they wished me to be, blind to my quiet strength. But now, the world saw clearly who Madeline Carter truly was. not simply a CEO, nor merely a victim, but a woman whose dignity could never be compromised. Looking out at the city lights, softly shimmering beneath the night sky, I whispered quietly yet resolutely, "They saw me as weak, but weakness was their blindness. My strength was always there. They simply chose not to see." The swift collapse of Orion Group's prestige unfolded before my eyes, quiet yet relentless in its inevitability. Within days, headlines documented Richard Preston's sudden resignation, Andrew's rapid fall from social grace, and the once untouchable family's abrupt shift into public vulnerability. Each news report carried echoes of disbelief, shock, and speculation, yet I found no pleasure in witnessing their fall, only quiet recognition of justice, long overdue. Late one evening, as I quietly reviewed quarterly reports at my desk, my phone vibrated gently. An unknown number flashed across the screen. Curiosity nudged me to answer. "Ms. Carter?" The voice was cautious, tentative. "Charlotte Preston." Surprise flickered briefly through me, quickly replaced by steady composure. "Charlotte," I replied calmly, evenly. "This is unexpected." There was a long pause, her usually sharp tone softened by defeat. "I'm not calling to plead or demand. I just wanted you to understand something." I leaned back slowly, surprised by her vulnerability. "I'm listening," Charlotte exhaled, the breath audible, weary. "I was wrong, Madeline. Not just about you, but about so much more. My arrogance cost my husband's career, my son's future. I've destroyed everything." Her words hung heavily in the air, remorse genuine and unguarded. Yet my heart felt no anger, only quiet empathy. "Charlotte, your actions didn't come without consequence, but they also revealed something important, something you still have a chance to learn." She was silent a moment, listening carefully. "Respect and kindness cost nothing," I continued softly, clearly. "Your power blinded you to basic human dignity, mine and others. What happened was inevitable, not because of me, but because arrogance always invites its own destruction." Her voice trembled slightly. "I see that now. I've never truly considered how deeply my actions could hurt. Can you forgive me?" My heart softened gently, unexpectedly. "Forgiveness isn't mine alone to grant, but understanding and change are within your control. Start there." Charlotte murmured softly, gratitude mixed with sadness. "Thank you, Madeline. Truly." After she hung up, I sat quietly, reflecting deeply. Charlotte's apology marked a significant turning point, not only for her, but for my own understanding of strength. My actions had never been about retribution, but accountability. The Preston family had faced consequences for their choices, and through it, a powerful lesson had emerged, one of humility, growth, and redemption. A week later, on a quiet afternoon at Elysium, Victoria stepped into my office, a gentle expression on her face. "Andrew is here. He asked to speak to you privately." I considered carefully, sensing genuine intent beneath his request. "Send him in." Andrew entered slowly, dressed simply, his demeanor humbled, his eyes cautious yet sincere. Gone was the charm, replaced by quiet introspection. "Maddie," he began softly, respectfully keeping his distance. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just need you to know I truly understand the weight of what I did now." I studied him gently. Understanding is the first step toward genuine change. He nodded slowly, eyes earnest, unguarded. "My family's fall taught me how easily arrogance blinds us. We thought power was our shield, but it became our prison." "You're right," I replied softly, calmly. "But realizing that is the path forward." Andrew exhaled deeply. "What you did, your courage, your integrity, changed everything. I wish I had seen who you truly were sooner." My heart softened slightly, acknowledging his sincerity without relinquishing boundaries. "Maybe now you'll see others clearly, Andrew. Not titles or wealth, but genuine worth." He smiled faintly, sad yet genuine. "I intend to." "Thank you for teaching me something no one else ever did." After he left, I stood alone once more, the gentle quiet of my office surrounding me. Andrew's humility marked an unexpected yet welcome closure. Orion's collapse hadn't been my triumph. It was merely a necessary reckoning, an opportunity for growth and accountability. And I recognized clearly the wisdom beneath my actions, not vengeance, but meaningful, lasting change. In the days that followed, I quietly observed Orion's restructuring. Andrew and Charlotte faded from prominence, learning humility from their fall. Richard Preston quietly retired, publicly apologetic yet accepting responsibility for Orion's failure. The empire they'd built crumbled swiftly, not from my actions alone, but from the instability arrogance had inherently caused. Yet, from Orion's ruin arose a powerful clarity within myself, an understanding that dignity and integrity outweighed power and prestige. Their betrayal had wounded me deeply, yet ultimately gifted me strength, resolve, and clarity. Their arrogance had fallen, replaced by humility. My quiet resolve had grown into enduring strength. Standing again by the familiar window overlooking the city lights, I breathed gently, feeling quietly liberated. Orion had fallen not because I'd sought vengeance, but because I'd chosen respect first for myself, then for others. My integrity was now unmistakably clear, unwavering, powerful in its quiet confidence. In that tranquil moment, I whispered softly, gently, yet firmly, "Their fall wasn't my victory. My victory was discovering the strength to uphold my dignity without compromise." In the quiet aftermath of Orion's collapse, I found myself reflecting deeply, not just on the actions I'd taken, but on the profound transformation that had occurred within me. My world had always been defined by careful control, strategic calculation, and guarded boundaries. Yet, in the midst of turmoil and betrayal, I discovered a strength within myself more enduring and genuine than any corporate victory could offer. One evening, sitting quietly in my office long after everyone had left, I stared thoughtfully at the city skyline. Victoria knocked gently at the door, her presence warm and comforting. "You're still here," she said gently, smiling as she joined me. "Just thinking," I replied softly, feeling a quiet sense of peace settle within me. "Everything that happened has made me realize something important." Victoria tilted her head curiously. "What's that?" "My success, our success, is incomplete unless it creates genuine change, something lasting beyond profits and influence," I explained carefully, thoughtfully. "I don't want my legacy to be defined by what I tore down, but by what I build up." She watched me closely, understanding dawning in her eyes. "You've always had the ability to inspire change, Maddie. Maybe now you've finally realized it." I nodded, smiling gently. "I have an idea, something meaningful, something that could genuinely empower others." "What do you have in mind?" she asked, intrigued. "A leadership academy specifically for young women," I answered decisively, excitement rising softly within me. "An institution dedicated not just to professional skills, but to strength of character, integrity, confidence, teaching women their worth beyond titles or expectations." Victoria's face brightened instantly. "It's perfect, Maddie, truly meaningful." Within weeks, the vision became reality. I launched the Carter Leadership Academy, naming it openly, no longer concealing my identity. The academy quickly became a haven for talented, ambitious women, each eager to learn, to grow, to find their strength, inspired by my journey and what I had overcome. On our first orientation day, I stood before a group of young, hopeful faces. Women from diverse backgrounds, each possessing incredible potential. I spoke from my heart, vulnerability transparent yet powerful. "Respect starts within," I told them clearly, gently. "Never surrender your dignity, your integrity, or your worth to anyone's judgment or expectation. Strength isn't about dominance, it's about clarity, kindness, resilience." One young woman raised her hand tentatively. "Ms. Carter, what inspired you to start this academy?" I smiled softly, remembering clearly the humiliation I'd once felt, the pain of Andrew's laughter, Charlotte's disdain. Yet now, those memories held no bitterness, only quiet gratitude. My inspiration came from experiencing firsthand how the world sometimes underestimates women, I answered truthfully. I once allowed others to define my worth, Through pain, betrayal, and challenge, I learned clearly who I was, and more importantly, who I wanted to be. Their eyes watched me closely, connecting deeply with my honesty. My goal, I continued gently, is to help you recognize your strength before anyone else defines it for you. That evening, returning home, I felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment, unlike anything my career had ever brought me. Wealth, influence, corporate victories, they paled beside this quiet, powerful feeling of purpose. This academy had become my rebirth, my true legacy, not revenge or retaliation, but empowerment and genuine change. Days passed into months, and the academy flourished. Messages poured in daily, filled with gratitude, success stories, and personal breakthroughs. Each message reinforced my understanding of purpose, transforming past hurt into healing, growth, and empowerment. One evening, Victoria and I sat quietly at a small cafe, reflecting on the Academy's profound impact. She placed her hand gently over mine, smiling warmly. "You've changed so many lives, Maddie, including your own." I nodded softly, feeling a peaceful certainty. What happened with Orion taught me something invaluable. Betrayal hurts, but it also clarifies our path forward. Sometimes we need pain to discover our true strength. Victoria squeezed my hand gently. "They say every ending is also a beginning." "It's true," I agreed softly. "They showed me who they were, but through that betrayal, I discovered who I truly am." Later that night, standing once more at the expansive windows of my apartment, I felt peaceful clarity settle deeply within me. Orion's betrayal hadn't defined me. It had revealed my strength. My journey of rebirth had led me exactly where I was meant to be, empowering others, inspiring growth, quietly building something lasting and meaningful. As I gazed over the city, I whispered softly, calmly, certain. From the ashes of betrayal comes clarity. From pain comes strength. From endings come new beginnings. This is my rebirth, my truth, my legacy. Months after the Academy's launch, I found myself slowly rediscovering a simple, quiet joy won, untouched by ambition or validation from others. For years, my definition of happiness had been tethered to professional triumphs, societal recognition, and elusive acceptance. Yet now, standing amidst a bustling room filled with laughter and earnest conversation at the Academy's one-year anniversary gala, I realized clearly what genuine happiness felt like. It wasn't the glamorous lights nor the applause of prestigious guests. It was the young women surrounding me, bright-eyed, confident, their futures no longer limited by fear or expectation. It was their smiles of pride, their radiant self-assurance, and the gentle strength that resonated clearly in every interaction. Here, amid sincerity and authenticity, I found fulfillment. "Maddie," Victoria said softly, gently touching my shoulder. "You should be proud. Look at what you've built." I glanced around the elegantly decorated room, not seeing prestige or status, but countless stories of hope, empowerment, and genuine connection. "It isn't about what I've built," I answered warmly, quietly reflective. "It's about what we've all discovered within ourselves: purpose, strength, freedom." Victoria smiled knowingly, gently squeezing my hand. "It suits you, Maddie, this genuine happiness. It's beautiful to witness." As I walked slowly through the gala, greeting each attendee personally, I found myself quietly absorbing each moment. A gentle voice caught my attention, and I turned, surprised yet unsurprised, to see Andrew standing near the entrance, hesitant yet sincere. He approached slowly, hands in pockets, gaze soft. "Maddie, I won't stay long. I just wanted to say thank you." Curious, I tilted my head gently. "For what?" "For teaching me humility," Andrew replied softly, earnestly. "For showing me respect and kindness matter far more than status or wealth. You gave me clarity I never knew I needed." I studied him closely, sensing genuine growth beneath his quiet humility. "And are you happier now, Andrew?" He smiled faintly, thoughtful yet calm. "Not happier, exactly, but wiser. You were right. True happiness comes from being authentic, from recognizing worth beyond titles. I understand that clearly now. I nodded gently. Then you've learned something invaluable. He glanced around the room, eyes sincere, respectful. You've created something extraordinary here. I'm genuinely happy for you. Thank you, Andrew, I answered softly, sincerely. As he left, I felt quiet closure settle warmly within me. No lingering bitterness, no unresolved feelings. Our encounter simply reaffirmed my path forward, quietly confirming the deep transformation I'd undergone. Later that evening, back in the quiet solitude of my apartment, I found myself reflecting deeply again. Happiness was no longer a distant goal or external validation. It was present, tangible, uncomplicated, found in purpose, connection, authenticity. I remembered the early days of my career ambitious yet lonely, accomplished yet unfulfilled. I'd chased external markers of success, believing they would validate my worth. Yet, Orion's betrayal had stripped away every illusion, forcing clarity upon me. Now, I understood happiness deeply and simply. It lay not in external approval, but in the courage to live authentically, kindly, truthfully. A gentle knock at my door broke my contemplation. Opening it revealed Victoria, holding 2 steaming cups of tea. Couldn't sleep either? She asked gently, stepping inside. Just thinking, I replied softly, gratefully accepting the tea. How life never stops teaching us lessons. She smiled knowingly. And what has life taught you now, Maddie? That genuine happiness, I replied quietly, warmly, isn't about titles, approval, or even romantic acceptance. It's simply being true to yourself, living authentically, respecting your boundaries, and finding meaning in purpose. Victoria smiled gently, nodding in quiet agreement. And you finally found yours. I felt peaceful contentment spread warmly through my chest. Yes, for the first time, I've truly discovered what happiness feels like. That night, as Victoria left, I stood quietly once more at the window overlooking the familiar city lights. The skyline was unchanged, yet I felt fundamentally transformed. My rebirth hadn't come from defeating Orion or proving my strength. It had come from embracing authenticity, integrity, and clarity. Happiness wasn't complicated, elusive, or dependent on others' approval. It was quiet, gentle, and deeply personal, a truth I now carried clearly within my heart. I whispered softly to myself, clarity profound, happiness sincere. They showed me betrayal. I discovered authenticity. They sought my humiliation. I found my purpose. In losing illusions, I finally gained genuine happiness. Time moved gently onward, each passing day deepening the quiet certainty of who I'd become. The echoes of the past betrayal, pain, and quiet triumph gradually faded into gentle lessons rather than lingering wounds. The Carter Leadership Academy blossomed, thriving as a vibrant beacon of inspiration, empowering countless women whose stories now intertwined with mine, each one quietly reaffirming the wisdom behind my journey. One crisp autumn afternoon, I stood quietly at the Academy's expansive balcony, overlooking the city skyline shimmering softly in golden sunlight. Behind me, a quiet murmur of laughter and conversation drifted gently from the Academy's main hall, filled with women who had once doubted their worth, but now embraced their limitless potential. Maddie? Victoria joined me quietly, her presence warm and familiar. There's someone who would like to see you. Curious, I turned slowly, heart calmly certain, eyes widening gently in surprise. Charlotte Preston stood quietly in the doorway, her posture humble, expression deeply sincere, yet cautious. Charlotte, I said softly, gently welcoming her approach. Madeline, she began carefully, her voice gentle, uncertain. I won't keep you long. I just needed you to know the profound difference your actions have made, not only for me, but for countless others. I listened carefully, respectfully, sensing genuine depth beneath her words. Your strength, your grace, it forced me to confront my own arrogance, Charlotte admitted quietly, eyes moist but clear. I've spent months reflecting, trying to rebuild myself into someone I can respect, someone worthy of others' respect. A quiet sense of peace filled me, understanding clearly the power of quiet dignity and authenticity. Then you found your own path of rebirth, Charlotte. That's powerful. She nodded softly, eyes sincere. I have. But only because you had the courage to show the world what true dignity means. Your academy, your actions, they've sparked change far beyond yourself. Thank you. As she departed quietly, I felt deep tranquility. Charlotte's humility marked the final quiet closure I'd unknowingly needed, a testament to the power of dignity and quiet resolve. Returning inside, I stood before a room filled with bright-eyed young women, their faces radiating quiet confidence, clarity, and strength. They watched attentively as I addressed them gently, sharing openly the wisdom I'd learned. Life will test your boundaries, your dignity, your integrity, I told them softly yet powerfully. Others may underestimate you, disrespect you, betray you. But remember always, your worth is never defined by others' opinions or judgments. Respect yourself first, always. From that strength, happiness, and fulfillment inevitably follow. Their eyes glowed quietly, sincerely inspired by my words, not simply because I'd built an academy, but because I'd shown them clearly what strength truly meant. My journey wasn't merely personal, it was collective, universal, resonating deeply with everyone who had ever struggled to feel respected or valued. Late that evening, alone once again in my quiet home, I sat comfortably by the expansive windows, city lights shimmering softly below. My heart felt deeply peaceful, no longer burdened by past betrayals, but quietly grateful for every experience that had brought me here. Orion's betrayal had been painful, yet it clarified my path forward with unmistakable certainty. I'd learned clearly who I was, who I wished to become, and what true fulfillment felt like. Happiness and self-respect weren't external validations, but internal truths, gentle yet profound lessons learned through humility, growth, and integrity. Quietly, calmly, clearly, I whispered softly to myself, a truth I now carried unwaveringly within me. They sought my humiliation, yet gave me strength. They showed me betrayal, yet taught me dignity. In their blindness, I discovered clarity. In their cruelty, I found kindness. And in losing illusions, I finally became free.